Hello, you beautiful people. This is going to be a breakdown video for my Windy Valley scene. So I originally devised this project as a way to test out some of the systems in Unreal that I've been meaning to get around to. The PCG system I've wanted to touch for a long time. And then once I had that PCG forest, I thought it would also be a good opportunity to get into the shaders, do some nice vertex wind offset, and then with that in place, tie it back into a blueprint system that acts as a master controller, and then be able to tie the Niagara effects and also the wind turbines into that same system. So yeah, let's get to the breakdown. Okay, so first things first, I guess I'll demo what I have here. So this BP wind control kind of runs the show here. You'll see there's particles spawning as part of this, like the wind wisps. See some of those. Yep. And then the trees are also abiding by this. So if we dial up the wind strength, this will this increases the amount of sway in the trees, and it will also increase the spawn rate of the particles. Wind speed, if we crank this, I see this gonna like affect the frequency of the sine waves that's driving the offset, and this is also going to increase the velocity of the particles, and it's going to decrease their lifetime so that the texture pan that's happening across those particles is going to happen faster. So they not only move faster, but they also scroll faster. And then the final part of this is the wind direction. So you'll see that's tied to the actor in the scene. So all you have to do is rotate the direction around X, and that will set which way the wind's blowing, which will affect not only the trees but also the particles. And the flutter also actually is affected by this. Um, so you have the big sway and then you have the micro sway, and that's more evident in stuff like the grass and the saplings, like the little leaves flutter. That the frequency and the strength of that is also driven by these systems. So if we turn these down, you'll notice it's not nearly as violent. Everything kind of mellows out. Yeah, let's dig under the hood and see how this is all happening. So we'll start with the leaf textures. So this is the master material. Almost all the foliage textures, in fact, I think all the foliage textures are using the same master material. So this is the trees and also the flowers and the small plants and bushes. So it's a real basic setup. Alpha cards driving the opacity, a bit of hue shift variation going on up here, but this is the interesting part. This is the tree sway. So this is where all the motion's happening on the vertex shader. This is where we started with this. So it's just a basic sine wave moving across. So you can you can picture a sine wave moving through, and that acts as like a mask for the direction offset, which is happening down here. So we're pushing it one direction, the sine wave's moving across that. That comes out looking pretty mechanical, as you can imagine. Actually, I can probably demo this. Let's crank this to 3 to 2. Yeah, here we go. G, like this. So if we go straight from here to here, You're still getting noise in the system here. We are getting some per instance variation, but you can see it's going back and forth and back and forth. It's like a metronome. So to fix that, we have these two up here, which is pretty much the same as this. It's just sine waves competing to create some interference. And that way it's not so clockwork, it's not so mechanical. I did have just two initially, but I found that there was an obvious rhythm in that. There's an obvious part where it loops, where the two are interfering. So I have a third just to create extra disruption. And that way it's not the same every time. Like you'll have parts where, like parts now where it's going a lot crazier, and then you have parts where it dies down and settles in. It kind of creates the illusion of gusts. The wind direction's really simple down here. It's just a direction vector offset. And the sine waves kind of mask that out. The strength sits at the end of the stack here, so yeah, there's a bit of variation, bit of noise variation here, just to add different sway amounts to each tree. But yeah, this just kind of multiplies at the end, and then the mask to keep the trees fixed at the base while the tops move. So that's just a basic grayscale mask, top to bottom, along the size of the object. And that way it works for these as well as it does for the big trees, like even the little flowers. In terms of parameters here, I mean, in terms of MPC parameters, so this is the material parameter controller. This is what is getting plugged into the blueprints. So this acts as like a bridge between the blueprints and the material system. But it's just the strength, the speed, and the direction. There's no need to overcomplicate this. If you can keep it simple, keep it simple. And you'll see these get called here on the speed, on the direction, and on the strength. I do also have strength and speed exposed as parameters in the material instances. And that is because something like this is going to require a different value to something like this. So it is still nice to have these as parameters exposed in the instances, just so you can fine tune the different plants and how they react. All right, on to the Niagara particle system. This is my basic setup, so it's a simple kind of mesh spawner. So we have a custom mesh. These are the wisps. So we have four of these, and then we have a simple panning texture on top of this. The part that's quite nice about this is this dynamic parameter. So that is controlling the pan, which means that instead of it being a steady panning rate, the Niagara system reads the lifetime of the particle and determines the pan rate based on the lifetime. So it will pan once per lifetime per particle. We can demo this here. Let's crank this up to 10 seconds. And then what you should see here is, yeah, since now these particles are lasting 10 seconds, it takes a lot longer for the wisp to pan all the way across. So that allows us to tie the lifetime and thus the speed into the wind speed, which is how we get the speedy wisps when we crank up the wind speed. So yeah, lifetime happens here. This is just random variance. It's always nice to have a bit of randomness in your system. The velocity, obviously driven by the wind speed, and then the direction as a parameter as well. So all of this stuff gets tied back into the blueprint system. So the blueprints is talking to the parameters drive the system, and then everything is responsive in the scene to the ultimate wind controller. So yeah, that's Niagara. And then this is where it's all coming together. So this is what the system that drives all of this. This is responsible for this is my BP wind control. These two are for the material parameter controls, or these three are for the material parameter controls. So this is what's getting called in the materials: strength, float, wind, speed, float, and direction, vector free. So this is where this is happening. I did have to put some interprets in here, just because I wanted the BP controller to be keyable for the render of the film. So when I did that initially, it was just hard cutting whenever the keyable items like the wind speed or the wind strength would change. All the foliage would snap to the new parameter. So I did have to interpret some of that just to get a smooth transition. And this down here is what ties it to the gizmo. So again, I did have a wind direction, which was just a vector free from -1 to 1 on X, from -1 to 1 on Y. I don't know, that's just a little clunky. It didn't feel super intuitive. But just tying it to the actual direction of the actor in the scene just feels a lot neater to me. Then we have the Niagara side of things. So once you've set the MCPs, then you're into NPCs, then you're into the Niagara systems. I'm doing some stuff here just to ramp the values. So we have a speed, we have like a curve. Just because because this happens at, like in the 1 to 3 range, those values aren't very high. And I did want the speed to get to like accelerate, like I wanted a curve to that. So that's what this is. Just to ramp up those values for certain things. And then again with the direction, we're just tied to the gizmo. Tied to the actor in the scene. Oh, and there is one more piece to this, of course, which is the turbines, which are also tied into this whole system. So if we zero this out and dive in, just that these guys are also being driven by the wind. So if we change the wind, they will slowly adjust. If you ramp up the wind strength, you'll see they churn faster. So that was the final piece to this puzzle. Just tying those into the system. I know technically they should be facing into the wind. It's how wind turbines work. But aesthetically, for the beauty shot, which is up here, I wanted them facing away. It's more aesthetically pleasing. So they do move with the system, but they just move with the system at a 90-degree offset. And that's all driven in here basically. So the construction script just adds a random start rotation, adds a random speed, and then on the event just to get it. When I first did this, it was all on tick. Up here, I'm trying to get it off tick. So every 2 seconds, it's checking. Yeah, setting a wind control. Then you have the logic for the rotation, and that puts out your target wind rotation. And then on tick, you call that down here. So the actual rotation still happens, but the logic, like the brain, is up here. That is pretty much all the wind elements. There's like other stuff I could talk about here. I did the virtual streaming texture for the landscape and the grass, the tree blending, the PCG graph in itself. But I think I'll do that in another video. I'll talk about the construction of the scene.